the Labour Party and the People's Democratic Party on the inspection and forensic auditing of ballot papers as well as the bimodal voter registration accreditation system BVAS that was used in conducting the Saturday, February 25 presidential elections. Well, the Court of Appeal has just delivered ruling on the first case, which is the one that involves INEC and the Labour Party. And of course, you're seeing it scrolling there on the bottom of your screen. And let's read it directly to you that the Abuja Division of the Court of Appeal has granted the Labour Party and its presidential candidate, Peter Obi, permission to carry out digital and forensic inspection on the February 25, 2023 election materials. However, the prayer of Labour Party to stop INEC from further use of the machine was not granted by the court, as according to the court, it would affect the governorship and state houses of assembly elections coming up this Saturday, 11th of March 2023. The order goes on that the INEC has been directed to avail a certified true copy of the data contained in the BVAS machine to the applicant, since it says that the data contained can be uploaded to the server and retrieved when necessary. So what that essentially means is that the INEC may still proceed with the conduct of the governorship election on Saturday, the 11th of March. Remember that there were fears that that election may be postponed if the court rules otherwise. But with the court ruling going on right now, of course, I've told you earlier that the one involving INEC and the Labour Party has just been settled. The court currently is still delivering ruling in the other application made by INEC against the application earlier granted to the PDP. So what essentially does all of this mean? Of course, let's keep you updated that we will be joining our correspondent in court later once the ruling is over, and of course take reactions from the lawyers who are right now inside the courtroom at the Court of Appeal here in Abuja. But let's have more expansive perspective to this. My colleague Teva Taf is here with me in the studio. Teva, it could have gone either ways.
Indeed, and it's almost like a long day wait for this ruling to come. And going by the reports that we also got on why it was delayed up to this moment, even with the ruling, Nigerians will still expect Independent National Electoral Commission to issue a statement or make a decision on whether Saturday's governorship and State Houses of Assembly election will go ahead. Recall that yesterday, the INEC lead counsel, Tanimu Inua, told the Court of Appeal that the Commission needs 5 days to reconfigure the over 170,000 BVAS machines. And if you need 5 days, and with this ruling you have barely 48 hours or thereabout to the elections, can the elections on Saturday still go ahead? That is a decision INEC needs to make at this moment.
Because it has 48 hours more or less.
Yeah, more or less.
Can it complete the reconfiguration within 48 hours? In fact, questions were being asked. The election, even if the order wasn't obtained as at last week Friday, could it have completed the reconfiguration of the machine within 7 days, because the order was granted on Friday.
On Friday, yes.
Between 7 days and when the election will hold. But another thing, Teva, is the fact that the court says, INEC, you are, whatever data is contained in the BVAS, you're uploading it to your server, so you can still avail the applicants these data. It takes us back to what happened in 2019 when we were told by INEC there was no server.
Yeah, indeed, 4 years of that. Recall that even in the petition handled by the tribunal at the time, and even the Supreme Court eventually, INEC insisted that there was no server, even though there were video reports of some of its officials saying there was a server, at the end. But the good thing is this time INEC says there is a server, and the court says, look, hence you have also told us that the data will be uploaded on that server. We can get back to it at the right time. But don't forget, it has also given INEC an order that it should provide a digital copies of what the Labour Party and its candidates is requesting for.
This is getting more interesting. We shall be joining the Court of Appeal very soon, bring you live feeds from the Court of Appeal very soon. We have our reporter there. Okezie Uzo is there at the Court of Appeal. The lawyers will soon be coming out of the court to take reactions from the ruling of the court. There you have it, live feeds coming from the Court of Appeal here in Abuja. Apparently, the ruling has almost been completed. The first ruling taken was that in the motion filed by INEC against the Labour Party, and the second one was that filed by INEC against the People's Democratic Party and its presidential candidate. So there you have it. The court has ordered that, look, the Labour Party, INEC grants them all the materials they need, but the court stopped or did not actually say do not tamper with it. That takes me back to what the fears of Unyechi Ikpeazu, the lawyer for lead counsel for Labour Party yesterday. He said when INEC moved the application in court, his fear was that the, in quote, reconfiguration that INEC intends to do would destroy relevant digital footprints and evidence which they need to prosecute the petition which they intend to file to challenge the February 25 presidential election. I do not know whether they would get any sense of satisfaction with the decision of the court, because they said, court, do not grant the application of INEC. If you do, the reconfiguration they intend to make may destroy relevant evidence which we need. But the court today has essentially not agreed or complied with the requests and prayers made by the Labour Party.
Indeed, Ikpeazu that you've mentioned, the good thing is he was part of the petition in Osun State. He represented the governor-elect, now Governor Ademola Adeleke. So I'm sure he was talking based on the experience of what he saw in the Osun State governorship election petitions tribunal. Don't forget that in that particular instance, the APC went to INEC. These certified true copies that were printed, the court is requesting, or has ordered INEC to print for the Labour Party, were printed. PDP went and got a different version of it, and then the tribunal had to request INEC to print directly from the BVAS machines, which is what they, and I'm sure that's the fear he was entertaining. But what we have been told, INEC is now telling us that what was printed from the BVAS machines in the Osun governorship is now stored in the server and can be retrieved at any material point in time that is needed.
But what the applicants, when I've said the applicants here before the court, that's the Labour Party and the People's Democratic Party, what they're primarily concerned is the fidelity of that data. In the process of transferring data from the BVAS machine into the server, would it stay the same? That is that really a legitimate concern? It
is. I think it's an issue of trust, going by the fact that, you know, INEC promised everybody in its guidelines that there will be real-time transmission of results from the polling units. That didn't happen. So everybody, almost everybody, let me not say everybody, almost everybody is apprehensive, you know, that look, this may not happen when it is needed. So it's an issue of trust now, as it were. But it appears the three-man panel of justices trust INEC enough to say, look, let's go ahead in this way. But I think this judgment is more, should I say political, more of in the interest of...
Teva, I think we'll just take a break now so we can take the counsel, one of the parties, before the court.
Procure vital evidence required for their petition. INEC filed an application seeking to vary those orders, particularly as it relates to the server, BVAS machine. Luckily for us today, the court refused to vary that order. That order is sustained and remains. In another ruling, the court was of the view that they are given the back-end server, which INEC undertook to provide to secure those materials, that order is partly sustained. Those initial orders are partly sustained. But in all, the good news is that the initial order of the court made on the 3rd of March, permitting Peter Gregory Obi and Labour Party to inspect the facilities of INEC, including the BVAS machine, which they intend to use to prove their petition. Those orders are sustained. The application seeking to vary it was refused. So that is the story for today. Thank you, gentlemen. No. My name is Ben Anachebe.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Of course you should.
Well, that's just one of the lawyers in this matter, Ben Anachebe, senior advocate of Nigeria, giving us what really the ruling of the justices were, which we have brought to you earlier, that the order granting the Labour Party and the People's Democratic Party access to the materials and the forensic data used for the conduct of the February 25, 2023 presidential election subsist. The court has maintained that order, but what the court has not done is to stop INEC from going ahead, refusing to stop the reconfiguration request made by INEC. Remember, INEC said, well, we have an election coming up on Saturday. We need to reconfigure the BVAS machines. And they were requesting the court, please vary this order so that we can go ahead with the reconfiguration and that the governorship election can hold. The court has basically supported or upheld that request of INEC. At the same time, the court also says INEC provide all the forensic data that was used for the conduct of the presidential election to the political parties who need them for the purposes of doing their forensic audits to proceed ahead to filing their petitions and challenging the outcome of the February 25 election. We shall be taking more reactions because there are a number of senior advocates of Nigeria involved in this case, representing the different sides to this case, INEC, the PDP, the Labour Party as well. Teva.
Yeah, indeed. It's a huge one, just like I was also trying to mention, that I believe this particular decision of the Court of Appeal they took highly in consideration issue of national interest. Recall they are saying, look, if they give the go-ahead by what Labour is saying, that look, they should not tamper with the BVAS machines, then it will affect the March 11 elections, and they don't want that to happen.
Are there no allowances of conduct of election going by the provisions of the Constitution on the dates within which election should be conducted to fill a vacancy in public office?
Indeed, the Constitution is very clear, going by the amendment that we had shortly before the 2015 elections, where it was amended that, look, the Commission must conduct elections not later than 30 days to the exit or the end of the tenure of any public officer. So as it is, going by the provisions of the Constitution, INEC has up till April 28.
Absolutely.
To conduct this election.
The vacancy is May 29.
May 29. So
it would still have conducted this governorship election next month.
Yes, sure.
And heavens won't fall.
At all. But don't forget also, even after the National Assembly elections, INEC is telling us they have about 46 by-election, supplementary elections that have to be conducted. A date has not been fixed. Nobody knows how many of such supplementary elections may come up after the governorship and state houses of assembly elections. It's after all of this that INEC will now fix a date, for the. And don't forget, they were not prepared for those supplementary elections. They have to print the ballot papers, provide its other logistics and all of that to conduct, those exams, which must be done before April 20.
In the general analysis, wouldn't it even benefit INEC more to have an extension so that they can make this contingency, firm up this contingency plan so that the problems of logistics that occurred last Saturday will not occur again.
You know, clearly INEC...
Okay, Teve, just let me put you on pause. Permit me to do that.
Yeah.
Our correspondent in court, Chibuzo Okezie, is standing by to take more reactions. Let's head to the Court of Appeal now.
Okay, good evening. The Court of Appeal just gave a ruling on, of course, what Nigerians have been expecting to hear, to ascertain whether the March 11 elections would actually, governorship elections will actually continue in a few days' time. But of course, they've given the Labour Party and its presidential candidate leave to actually inspect, this materials. Of course, the February 25th presidential election materials. Standing with me here in court is one of the lead lawyers of the Labour Party, and its presidential candidate. Alex Ejiseme, who joined me here now to say a little about what transpired in court today, sir. Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, please, just a little detail about the bullying and then how it affects the entirety of the whole process, the electoral process.
Okay, yesterday the Independent National Electoral Commission brought an application to vary the order which was made by the Court of Appeal on the 4th of March. Interestingly, the Court of Appeal this evening refused to vary that order. But what is worrisome to us is that the courts, in their own application, allowed them to reconfigure the BVAS machine according to them for purposes of the March 11th governorship election in the country. Well, INEC gave an undertaking that they have a back-end server that will protect every data. So we are going to hold them accountable. They said they have a back-end server. So we are going to hold them accountable if anything will happen to any of the information as contained in the BVAS machine. So that is essentially what transpired in court today.
So generally, what do you think the implication of this? What do you think the implication is about this whole?
Well, we are not too comfortable with that. We are not too comfortable that the court will allow them to reconfigure. But the court has spoken, and there's nothing we can do about it. We had expected that INEC should have separate BVAS for separate elections, because when you allow them to reconfigure, how sure are we that the information stored already will be protected during the course of the reconfigure? So these are the fears we have, but the court had spoken and the INEC had given an undertaking that nothing will happen to the information stored in the BVAS machine. So that is our position.
Okay, the ruling of the court today, does it have any constitutional implications whatsoever in terms of looking at the law and the constitution itself? Do you think that this is a very good move for the Labour Party and of course its presidential candidate?
Well, we are going to review when we get to our office. We are going to discuss with our candidates and the team of lawyers, and we decide what next to do with respect to the ruling. That's all I can tell you for now.
Thank you very much.
All right, well.
Thank you. There you have it. The counsel for Labour Party and its presidential candidate, Alex Ejiseme, SAN, who have spoken in the light of the fact that of course they are not they are holding INEC to the award, saying that they would upload most of these materials for the configuration to actually take place. And the court has said that since you have said that you would upload these materials and then these materials are readily accessible when needed, it means that yes, you can go ahead with the March 11 governorship elections while making available the certified true copy of this of the data contained in the BVAS to this to the party and its presidential candidate, of course, for forensic checks. Back to you, Utube.
Well, thank you very much, Chibuzo Okezie. Chibuzo, reporter there in court. We had a lawyer for the Labour Party, Alex Ejiseme, senior advocate of Nigeria, who's basically summarized some of the things we have said earlier. Alex told us that the court has allowed INEC to reconfigure its BVAS machines, and that INEC also gave an undertaking that they will ensure that information that has already been transferred or is still being transferred to the back-end server from the BVAS machine remains for them to access it. Teva takes us back to the issue of trust, because the senior advocate there says, well, they're not very comfortable with the fact that INEC has been allowed or given room to reconfigure these machines. It may affect those sensitive information which they hoped to extract from those machines for this election.
Indeed. You see, there is a school of thought that believes that just the way INEC accredits agents or parties for polling units, a collation center, there should also be agents of the parties at the back end where all of this server thing is happening. That will eliminate every sense of doubt in the process. But unless that is done, we'll have these charges.
Those should be technical agents who understand
ICT very well.
Not just those agents.
No, certainly no. And you can be sure that all the parties will have more than enough, of such talent. And one thing the Labour Party lawyer also said is that INEC should have provided different BVAS machines for governorship and all of that. These are issues that are coming up from the conduct of these elections. The commission will have to look at that moving forward, or consider conducting all the elections in one day, so that you don't have this issue of reconfiguration, and all of that moving forward. But again, in places where they have to go ahead with supplementary elections and all of that, it has to be reconfigured.
Absolutely.
So technology has come to stay in our electoral process, and we must learn how to handle and manage it moving forward.
What I really can't really remember, I think I have to look back on some of my records, is in the run-up to this election, whether INEC at any time had mentioned, even before the election was held, sometime last year, when it would introduce the BVAS technology and all of, whether it had at any time mentioned that it would require reconfiguration after the presidential and national assembly elections. If I missed that, Teva, I don't know whether you also missed that. Did you ever hear INEC mention a reconfiguration after the presidential election to prepare the BVAS for the governorship election?
They may not have said that, but I know they talked about configuration of BVAS. Before they went into the February
configuration I heard, which I have in my records as a journalist, was per polling unit, because each BVAS is polling unit specific. So they'll configure each BVAS for the over 107,000 polling units across the country.
Indeed, as it is, this issue of reconfiguration started long when we're using the card reader, and even with the BVAS, it's such that if you pick any of the BVAS machines now, the expectation is that you cannot use it for voting or anything. It's configured in a way that you cannot use it until 8:30 of Saturday of the elections. The date, the time is included, and 24 hours after that, you cannot use the BVAS again until it is reconfigured. So it's been there. It's just that so much attention has not been paid to it. It has not come up in the way and manner it has come. So, which is what I said, that technology has come to play a role in our elections, and we must learn.
I asked that question because there have been a series of engagements by INEC, not just with the media, but with the other key actors and stakeholders as far as elections is concerned, the political parties, the security agencies. INEC had, to be fair, carried as much as possible, the key stakeholders along in their planning, preparation, and that's why they could be held to account for not transferring and transmitting results real time as the promise. And that's why I raised that question. Now to the back-end server. INEC says it now has a back-end server, so it's now public knowledge. The court has taken judicial notice of that, more or less. In the event that this goes into the petition trial proper, then information from the back-end server would have to be provided. I remember being in court post-2019 election. Teva, you joined me the day the judgment was delivered, and the issue of the server was the biggest deal as far as that was concerned, and INEC insisted it had no server whatsoever. But looking at this electoral act and the guidelines for the 2023 election, it is clear that from what INEC has said, not just the results of the election are transmitted by the BVAS machine, the accreditation data is actually the first to be transmitted.
Yes.
So as people are accredited with the BVAS machine, the data is transmitted to the server. So I guess if you are talking about forensic auditing of the BVAS, you're not just talking about results as well. You're talking about data of accreditation, which was the basis upon which, Osun State, the election was cancelled, because it was discovered that the accreditation data contained in the BVAS was much more less than the number of people who voted.
That's what we're going to have, moving forward. So many things have been thrown up, as it were. And INEC, I want to believe INEC is also taking note of some of these things so that it will help it in planning future elections. I want to believe that in the next cycle of elections, INEC will not, for instance, be talking of having the governorship and state house of assembly elections 2 weeks after the presidential election, going by the experience with which they are going through right now.
Well, one of the lawyers for the Labour Party, Alex Ejisome, while our colleague Okeze Chibuzo was interviewing him, said, we will review this judgment. We're really not totally satisfied, but we will review the ruling, beg your pardon. It's not a judgment, it's a ruling of the Court of Appeal, and then we shall take a decision one way or the other. Is that a hint that they may likely go to the Supreme Court, perhaps tomorrow, against the decision of the Court of Appeal? Well, that remains to be seen. That's how much we can take on the analysis of these breaking news coming from the Court of Appeal. On behalf of my colleague Teva Tiaf, myself, Utubal Moran, stay with AIT as we continue our programming.